All right, this is part 2 to the relationships video, where relationships just being too expensive. So I'm going to provide you with the solution to it, with a solution to it. It's a very old solution, but at the same time, I don't want to leave anybody hanging who's will look at that video and say, wow, relationships, what's the point of getting into them? Relationships are beautiful. It's the most beautiful, one of the most beautiful things to be a part of. Companionship is nothing like it. It's nothing like it. But here's what really makes relationships work, and here's what makes relationships inexpensive. Communication. Communication. And we don't just mean just talking, right? We mean effective communication. We mean communication with self-control, communication with mutual respect, communication with manners, communication with consideration and compassion and empathy, understanding, communication where you're willing to hear both sides of the story, communication where you're not quick to snap to rash judgments, where you're not making assumptions, where you're not overgeneralizing, where you're not minimalizing. So these things, and I guess I should say it from a man's perspective, fellas, you are the psychologist of the relationship. If you don't want to be a psychologist or psychiatrist in a relationship, then a relationship is not for you. And this is not at all to say that women are crazy, not at all. But the part that you play, you have to look at it like this. The way the female brain works is like a ball of yarn. And the spirit of a female, in this instance, the spirit of a woman that you're in a relationship with, naturally they're inclined to really take on everything. This is the magic behind why women are so able to multitask, because they're used to taking in everything. And it's synonymous and correlates, I should say. It correlates to and corresponds to the female reproductive organ. They're the receivers. They're the receivers, just like they receive seed. They receive life, though, but that also means everything. So the average woman, you could say, has a hyperactive crown chakra. This is where you get things like ESP from, and women having a hunch. This is coming really from the crown, even though it might seem like a gut feeling that where it might be associated with intuition down at the core, down at the soul. It's really a crown chakra thing. The women are taking on all information that comes in, or anything that comes their way, and anything that's in their circumference, their radius, their sphere of influence. They'll take it on, even if they can't unravel it, because it's a ball of yarn. They're adding string. And this is a good thing, because the women are collectors like that. They can gather. And I know in society it's situated where the man is supposed to be the hunter, the gatherer, the breadwinner, etc. But it's really a woman's natural disposition to be resourceful and to be a collector, a gatherer. Maybe not necessarily a hunter, but definitely a collector. So as the man is short for manager, like a manager. Manage what your female counterpart brings to you. Manage it. Learn to manage it. But again, men, this comes with self-control, and it comes with mastering the self. If you have even some semblance of self-mastery, you can be very effective in a relationship. What makes relationships not work, I guess, amongst the superstars, right? They say it's not so much money things, but it comes down to the physicality. It comes down to probably sexuality, right? With the tone that is taken in today's age, in today's era. You have a lot of just empty storylines where they say this couple broke up because this and that. And they don't always get into it, because sometimes it's very, very private. And if it's very private like that, it can sometimes be infidelity that they don't want to disclose. And it can be like issues in the bedroom that they don't want to put out there. These things can happen. But communication and empathy, believe it or not, really translates into the bedroom. Because if you're not, as a man, if you're not feeling a woman's mind, then how are you going to know her erogenous zones? If you're not managing that ball of yarn, which becomes her mind with all the different strings. Now, if you could untangle all of that ball of yarn, now you come into what is called string theory. String theory, just like the quantum physicists talk about string theory, where each thread is like a world of activity to make it more less scientific and to make it more societal for you. A string of events, you take those strings, all different strings of events and incidences, and you can get a ball of yarn. This is why they give a ball of yarn to a cat, a feline, and that's usually associated with femininity. The cat gets a ball of yarn to play with, and that is also synonymous again with the ball of yarn that becomes a woman's mental state, because she takes on whatever comes her way, and these strings eventually connect and form a ball. Now, it's the man's job, if he's allowed to. You don't want to be invasive, but if you're allowed to, you can unravel those threads and you can pull that string out. So instead of a ball, she'll see a line. Instead of a time ball, she'll see a timeline. Instead of a ball of events, she can see a line of sequenced events. It's a man's job to make sense of things and to make things more simple. That's how the man's mind works. The man deals with simplicity. The woman deals with complexity. Neither side is wrong, because if a man is too simple with no complexity, he can be easily conquered by a more complex, driven foe. But if you're too complex, you can end up defeating yourself just by driving yourself mad. So the two have to go, they have to come together. The push and the pull, the giving and the receiving, they have to come together. The key is no use in walking around with a set of keys that go to nothing. This is what happens when a man brags about his riches but doesn't have a missus. I'll say that again. This is what happens when a man brags about his riches and doesn't have a missus. It's like a man walking around with keys with no door. He's walking around with a whole bunch of keys and no lockbox, no safe box. He's walking around with keys but no car. Keys but no entryway. Keys but no treasure to unlock. The two of you complete each other. Or in the cases of polygyny, the unit of however many of you are involved, you should complete each other. You should complete one another. So that's how you can not make relationships cheap, but to make them far less taxing and far less emotionally expensive. Because the idea of finances, you understand, that's a topic for a different conversation that really doesn't have anything to do with relationships. Of course, you guys are going to bring money together, and money is a reality of life, but the money management thing takes a different set of lessons that is not connected to relationships. You can tie it in, but there's principles about finances that you want to bring into the relationship. Otherwise, the two of you or the few of you are learning finances together as a unit. Nothing wrong with that. But as far as relationships and the taxing factor of it, you would be like tax amnesty as a man. And as far as a woman's role and what's expected of her, that would be better coming from a knowledgeable woman. Take somebody like Shahrazad Ali. Ali. I hope I'm saying her name right, but she has many gems, countless priceless gems coming from the female perspective, not just in terms of dealings in relationships, but dealings with life in general. So she's like the seasoned mother, the seasoned sage, the seasoned prophetess seer who can really break down those things from a woman's perspective. But as far as a man's perspective, again, you really want to tap into more so seasoned men, and not to say that a young man can't learn and that a young man can't be mature. Not saying that, but time and experience and seeing different lessons repeated enough for you to catch it, for you to learn and advance from, these are going to be the things that might be associated with a person who's lived longer because they've had more time to experience more things. Now, I should say this, that age does not automatically equate to maturity, right? Because you can spend 60 years locked in a box somewhere, never seeing the world, and you're not going to know more about the world as the person that's half your age that's been all around the world twice. You're just not going to know as much about the world as that younger person. So with age comes experience. With the handling of experience comes wisdom. Don't be fooled by people who have a whole bunch of experiences and they want to claim themselves as teacher over you, right? Because a person who has experience with fire, more experience with you than you with fire, for example, can say, I've been burned 100 times touching fire that I'm not supposed to. I have a deeper experience with fire. Yes, but you don't have wisdom when it comes to fire because you get burned constantly. So that's the example where just because they're older doesn't mean they're growner. Just because they're older doesn't mean they're growner. So you want to approach this with a discerning mind, an open mind, not a free mind. A free mind can be easily influenced and stolen and hijacked, but an open mind. Whereas at the foundation, you still have unshakable principles that you're measuring everything outside of you against to sync up and to see if these things coincide with pre-existing beliefs that work for you. So again, that's the long and short of making relationships inexpensive in a nutshell. And you just apply to whatever situations, whether you be male or female, you see your position in it. If you're the female, you're gathering the ball of yarn. You're gathering all the material, all the threading. If you're the man, you're unraveling that and you're providing context and meaning and allocation to the string. Together, y'all might make a new ball of yarn. Or together with that ball of yarn, you might knit a sweater. You might crochet a blanket. So male and female, they become a garment of family. Super T Sigma, stay encouraged.